So today I wanted to make an updated version of my video on diet and supplements. So I've spoken in the past about what I think is the best diet for recovery. And what I spoke about in the past was kind of to point people away from the need to get caught too much in stressful elimination, strict diets, because I was speaking from my experience there. So that was an important part of my recovery. And I have a video talking about that, getting too focused on supplements and a really strict diet can actually be not helpful to your recovery because it's stressing you out. It's triggering your nervous system into fight or flight more than it is kind of benefiting you. So for a lot of people, shifting to a more relaxed, intuitive, balanced diet can actually be a big relief to just say, hey, you don't need to focus so much on eating like crazy healthily, rather just bring a little bit more balance into your life. So that's the previous discussion I've had. But today I want to talk about the counterpoint. And again, the reason I'm quite eager to do this is because I'm always sharing from my experience. So for me, after full recovery, life really became about experimenting, pushing my limits. Because of the fear was gone, right? All the fear that had been in my system for so long of symptoms, of crashes, of, hitting rock bottom. I'd worked through all of that. I'd gotten to the place where I was willing to face whatever came up. And that was synonymous with full recovery for me, because then I could exercise again. I could just have fun. And that having fun was beneficial to the nervous system as well. So it's like becomes a positive cycle. But as you'll see, if you watch my content, there was a lot of work that went into this, right? It wasn't spontaneous. It wasn't, sure, in essence, eventually it is spontaneous, but you have to be willing to dive into the fear and face the symptoms and really feel into the resistance really deeply. Like I went through a lot of that kind of work, and then life becomes spontaneous and open and flowy. But a lot of times people, when I've shared my story in certain places, people are just like, oh, you must have just had a natural, spontaneous recovery. And, if I was going around saying that to people, I would be lying about the kind of discomfort that you have to go through to get to that space. In the end, everything is spontaneous. Everything is happening spontaneously. But, it's misleading to pretend that you don't have to go into the dark spaces to get there. So that's just an aside, but it's very important. I really want to clarify that. But then let's talk about what I wanted to share here today is after full recovery, because the fear was gone, I was able to just do whatever I wanted. And a lot of that included, and it was important. What happens is whenever we're too much fixated on a certain side, then we're going to, like once we let go of that fixation, let's say strict diet, strict pacing, fear-based, whatever, we might spring over to the other side where we're too reckless, but it's part of the learning curve. So that's what happened for me. After full recovery, I just didn't really care. And I was like, I'll do whatever I want. And that was important for me because I wanted to see what happens if I push my boundaries to the limits. What happens if I eat all the wrong things? What happens if I let go of all these kind of recovery-based tools? I wanted to see what would happen. And that is what brings you back into balance, because you were like, okay, no, it's not the super strict side. And no, it's not the super don't give a shit about anything side. It's quite in the middle. It's about being authentic with what your body wants and needs, but not being too strict and still being light and spontaneous. So if we talk about in diet, like let's bring it down to practical, useful terminology, because that can sound abstract. Often this kind of talk is like, okay, come to the middle path. Don't be too much here. Don't be too much there. But Kyle, what the fuck does that mean about diet? So let's talk about that. So what I've found with diets and supplements is just kind of be practical about it. So the best diet that I would recommend for recovery would be something along the lines of eating constantly, super processed, high sugar content foods does make you feel worse, right? It's cool. I've experimented with that. Like I was literally after full recovery, I wasn't afraid of symptoms. I was like, I'll do whatever. But after a couple of periods of just kind of eating whatever I wanted, eating food based purely on desire and pleasure, it left me feeling less energy. It left me feeling more kind of lethargic the next day, less motivation, desire to go and do things. And I could see how that could really spiral someone into, doing that long term and not having released the fear in the way that I'd already been through. That can really keep you stuck. So it is important to talk about the other side of diet. Like if somebody is got a bad diet, that is going to make you feel worse. And that can spiral into bigger things, right? So use everything as like foundational to help you in the right direction, right? So with diets, experiment for yourself. Don't live from a place of fear. But then if you experiment, be willing to drop the things that don't feel so good. But again, don't do it from a place of fear. Just like if you eat something that makes you feel worse, don't get caught up in these mind spirals of, I shouldn't have eaten that. Now I'm here. If I hadn't eaten that, I wouldn't have been in this crash. No, it's pointless. You've eaten it. You've got the symptoms that you have right now. But just be like, okay, I realize that when I eat that, I don't feel great. So I'll eat less of that in the future. And then part of the balance is like on special occasions, like for myself, if I look at what's the most balanced way that I like to approach diet now, it's like most of the time I actually really enjoy eating whole foods, mostly vegetables. I've been vegan, vegetarian. I've experimented with that for a couple of years, and I generally feel healthier, more energetic when I do that. But it's always about what works for somebody, right? I'm not going around preaching that everybody needs to cut out meat out of their diets. It was just for me experimenting with what worked, right? So the balanced approach looks like if I'm with my family and they're making a big meat-based dish for like somebody's birthday or a special occasion like Easter, then I'll probably partake in that. And I will notice that the next day I feel a little bit worse. It's just something I've noticed. My digestion is not as great, probably because my body's just not used to digesting meats in the way it used to be. But any processed food just leaves me feeling worse. But again, I'm just balanced with it. I'm like, okay, I don't like eating like that a lot, but I'm also a little bit more flexible with just kind of going with the flow of things. So on certain days, I'll just do that. And then things come back into natural balance. Like if I get in it doesn't really happen anymore because I've fluctuated from both sides. But if the way I got to this really nice balanced place now is I would fluctuate too much to the just eating whatever I wanted, eating unhealthy processed foods. And then I would get to this place where all I wanted to do was just eat a shitload of vegetables and like really healthy stuff to make me feel better. And now I just kind of, things come into a natural balance where it's like, I'm really into making these really nice health juices in the morning just because I've played with it. In the morning, I would have a coffee and I would have like a biscuit or something. And then I found on the days where I like load myself up with really high nutrient packed juices, like I'll put beetroot and ginger and lemon juice and apple juice and carrots and celeries all packed into a juice. And then later I'll have like oats and blueberries and whatnot. It just works better for me, right? But it's not coming from a place of fear. Then the next day, if somebody wants to go out for breakfast, then I'll do that and maybe have bacon and eggs. And then on those days, I can feel it doesn't feel as good. But if you're in a place where you're really stuck, then I would give a little bit more attention to focus on the foods and the inputs that make you feel healthier. And from all of the research I've done and just the experimenting with myself, if you don't know what might work, some suggestions are focusing on whole foods, natural kind of, I like the more just whole food diet. Like I think that's a pretty safe place to start. Just cut out high processed sugars, cut out and then for some people you can see like maybe less dairy. But personally, I find it, I did that for ages. And again, the stress of it was causing me more harm than help. But those are things you can play with. Dropping a lot of meat for me was actually helpful. But again, experiment with it. Be light. Don't let your mind turn this into such a big stressful deal. That's the key here, right? Is once but to get to that space, you have to feel the fear. It's not about running away from the fear. It's about making space to feel it. And then from there, you can just make much more intuitive, natural decisions of, okay, let me experiment with diet. And then I can quite see, I like raw, healthier foods, like, raw juices and that kind of stuff. But I'm not crazy like about it, where I'll just eat in the flow of things, right? I guess that's that's the way to leave it, to keep it simple, because I don't want to overcomplicate this, and I don't want to make out as if there's some perfect diet that you need to find, because that will stress you out more than it will help you. I want you to just kind of find balance in yourself. So see, where can I maybe improve my diet if I need to, cut out processed stuff. I just find that really processed stuff just does not work well with me. But again, some days I'm okay with it. I'm just like, whatever, I don't mind. And then for the other person, see, can I actually relax a little bit more? Can I just allow myself to eat whatever I want, but always be open to coming back into balance, right? Part of the learning process is seeing, oh, I went out of balance a little bit. So, maybe I need to, whichever side, from whichever fixation you get stuck in, too hyper-focused on health or too hyper-focused on not giving a shit. Either one is going to leave you feeling not good. And that's when you have to be willing to make those little changes to come back into the middle, but without turning it into this big drama in your mind that, oh, I've had a big crash and I shouldn't have done that, and now I'm back at square one. It's just unnecessary, right? That's part of waking up from suffering, is just all of that just stops because you just don't feel it anymore. You just don't, the thoughts still come, but as long as you learn to detach from them, and I've talked about this in many videos, learning to disidentify from thoughts as they arise, you don't get caught in those spirals anymore. And you just want to see when you are, and you want to see how much that makes you feel worse. So yeah, that's what I've got to say on diet today. And yeah, I hope that helps bring you into a little bit more balance and ease. All right, good luck.